After playing through 12 minutes in about 6 hours, I was left polarized by its ending. I had gone through so many twists and turns that just left me distraught with so many emotions. 12 minutes will without a doubt be a divisive game that features questions of morality, love, and just very complex emotions that will ultimately make or break this game for you. I wouldn't exactly call it a fun game, but a thought-provoking one that left me almost paralyzed in how I should go about writing this review. In the end, 12 minutes to me felt like a game worth playing, but not without its problems and quality, while also asking questions that will ultimately ruin the game for a lot of people. But before we jump into this review, make sure you hit that subscribe button and hit the bell icon to stay up to date on my reviews. Any comments and likes on the video also helps it come up in search, so let me know, what's one of your favorite thought-provoking games? I'll be replying to all the comments down below. To keep this as spoiler-free as possible, I'll only be using gameplay from the first few loops of the game and avoid any specific details. 12 minutes follows a husband coming home from work to eat dinner with their wife. Just as you get ready to eat, a knock on the door interrupts the meal. It's a cop who's accusing your wife of murder. Before you know it, you're knocked out and you wake up if you were just getting home again. You're in a 12-minute time loop, and with very few details, it's up to you to find out why. It's a story with multiple layers that gave me answers as much as it did more questions. While I'd find a small breadcrumb toward what I was supposed to do, I'd suddenly be presented with more information that just left me more puzzled than it did reassure me that I was on the correct path. There's also plenty of optional dialogue that you may or may not encounter depending on how you go about playing. This also means there's multiple ways to get information at times. While you and your friend will end up getting the same ending, how you go about there exactly in what order can vary depending on each playthrough. I really enjoyed that aspect as it only further helped me feel like an investigator in this psychological puzzle of a game. While I enjoyed the challenge in the puzzles, there are moments in the writing, specifically certain topics that people are going to consider problematic or at least draw the line at. I can't really go into specifics without straight up spoiling the game, but I will say that 12 minutes really requires an open mind that is okay to go to really out there places when it comes to subject matter and writing. For as much as I think this game is still worth playing, I wouldn't exactly blame anyone for not wanting to play it having known what the subject is. 12 minutes plays a lot like classic point-and-click adventure games. While this is available on Xbox One through Game Pass, I opted for PC for my review for a more authentic feeling experience. At the start of your first time loop, you control the main protagonist around their apartment complex as they arrive home. You can have them move around the apartment, talk to your wife, and interact with objects around you. As you collect different objects, you can tinker around the house for any clues as to why this time loop is happening. Likewise, any new information is retained over the next time loop, so you can use that information to further ask your wife questions in the second time loop. This is the constant gameplay loop 12 minutes throws you in, and right when you find a new piece of information or a hidden item, you will most likely spend the next 5 to 10 time loops trying to figure out the correct way to use the item or new information. At times this made puzzles feel bloated, like I had been solving the same puzzle for an hour now, that just had 10 different steps. While I felt like a genius when I finally figured out the correct sequence of a puzzle, I also felt exhausted through a lot of these sequences. I think that's partly because of how much time you spend in this apartment, with just about most of the game taking place all within the same area, only with the occasional difference in scenarios for the last third of the game. By the end of the game, I felt tired, exhausted, and puzzled. I immediately wanted to talk to other friends who had beaten the game to hear their takes on it, as I was left speechless by the ending. In many ways, I found it similar to the ending of The Last of Us, asking questions of morality about certain characters. Likewise to The Last of Us Part 2, a game that was depressing to play but still very much worth playing, I felt somewhat similar about this game. Published by Annapurna Interactive, who is equally as known for its artful cinematic pieces as much as they are thought-provoking games, 12 minutes leans more on being thought-provoking than being a cinematic masterpiece. Outside of a few moments presented in a third-person camera view, the rest of the game is presented in this top-down view similar to the older sim games. The color temperature varies between cold and warm, really setting the atmosphere for different emotional conversation. In general though, a lot of the design of the environment and characters is simplified monochrome. I didn't find it stunning, but good enough to carry the story without outshining what is very much more a game that should be remembered for its writing more than its presentation. With that said, there's some great camera work and transitions during the more symbolic and metaphoric moments of the story. Sadly, there are moments where the cracks in the presentation start to show themselves. Characters will bump into each other or just walk through others entirely. I ran into a moment where the cop character was stuck walking in place for way too long that it became funny in what was supposed to be a serious moment. For a game that's been in development for so long, especially with Annapurna behind it, I was shocked by how unpolished some of the animation work was. At least it's not a very demanding game, running rather flawlessly on consoles and lower spec PCs.
On base Xbox One, you can expect a 1080p 30 frames per second locked performance. That gets upgraded on the Series S and X to a 1440p 60 and 4K 60 locked respectively. I was also able to run the game on my PC running an RTX 3060 at 4K 60 on high setting. While it may not have a large cast, 12 Minutes has quite the star-studded cast featuring James McAvoy as the protagonist, Daisy Ridley as your wife, and Willem Dafoe as the cop. All three bring their best acting chops to Luis Antoni's script that dives into some deep, heavy emotions and subjects. Having these few actors confined into a small space felt reminiscent of the impressive work done in the film 12 Angry Men that also took a small cast and did amazing work on what was a film mostly taking place in a single room. Unfortunately, there are moments where the lines start to overlap, and that's more on the programming of the game rather than the delivery from the actors. Just as the characters tend to walk through each other, the same happens to the lines as if the game can't prioritize one over the other, or as if it forgets that the line was already said. The music, on the other hand, is phenomenally well composed. There's a balance of strings and pianos that evoke various emotions of anticipation, anxiety, and somberness depending on the moment. As a revelation was made, I'd hear a slow buildup of strings at the corners of my ears that only further heighten the intensity of the scene. 12 Minutes was a great game, but not so much a happy one. It's melancholy, thoughtful, and honestly rather difficult to process. But a game that makes you sad or challenges you to think about complex and uncomfortable subjects isn't a bad game. Just one that may not be for everyone, and that's completely fine. Some people will learn the twist of this game and immediately regret playing it or turn it off completely. For me, I was left dazed by it, but I didn't regret playing it. It presented vastly interesting scenarios and questions that immediately made me want to go on a podcast and talk about it. While it suffers from a few presentation issues and some bloated puzzles, I still thought the pain was worth the journey.